Afternoon, YouTube. Sidekick here. The observant among you will notice that I am not in any of my trusty normal airplanes. I'm in a new aircraft today. It's an F-86 Sabre. I purchased it at the latest sale that Eagle Dynamics and Steam were having, and I thought maybe I would do a little introductory video. Now, I know that's not the sort of thing I normally do, and it's a bit of a new thing for the channel, and I'll explain it once we get airborne. I've been thinking about other things I'd like to do with the channel beyond what I've done before. But let's do a quick cockpit tour here. Take a look here. This looks to be like our airspeed indicator and our altimeter. That's pretty basic. That's a compass. That is the vertical speed indicator. Here we have a accelerometer or a G meter. Interesting thing to notice, we have a repeater of the altimeter up here on the console that we'll use for bombing. That'll be fun. Over here we have the engine instruments. That is the percent power, but it's also important, the one below it, oh yes, the one below it is engine temperature. We need to keep an eye on that. Do a quick check, make sure we have free motion in all of our control axes, and I've got them bound to the right controls. Rudder pedals move. That's the throttle. Oh, and the flap indicator. Flap indicator is interesting. Works very well with my Warthog joystick, see, because when you put it down, the flaps go down, and then you put it back to the middle to keep them there. And then when you want them to go up, you switch it forward, and it moves them up. And once they're up, you switch it back to the middle. Now, the only problem is that there's no indicator in the cockpit to tell you where the flaps are, so you just kind of have to do it by guess and by God, I guess. So, get the flaps down again. Just take a quick look again. All of the control surfaces seem to be moving with the stick. So I think we're just about ready to take off and see what this puppy can do. So I think the best way to think about the Sabre is as a little bit of a Warbird on steroids. As we're running up the engine now, getting it up smoothly. There's the throttle coming up. Engine temperature's already up. Max, and let's go. And wheels rolling. When you think about it, I mean, this airplane was designed in 1947, and it was very much designed with the same philosophy that the end of World War II Warbirds were being designed with. It's basically a platform that's designed around an engine. It's designed to go fast and climb high. Well, that was an interesting takeoff, and there's an interesting feature. When the wheels come up, the seat goes down, and conversely, when you lower the wheels on landing, it raises your seat so you can see over the nose, which is an interesting feature. Okay, let's get ourselves trimmed out here, and then let's talk a little bit about the Sabre and a little bit about this video. Okay, the flaps are up. We're building speed. Let's put it in a little bit of a climb and turn south down the coast. So, the F-86 was designed with one job in mind. It was supposed to fly fast and fly high and intercept Soviet bombers that were carrying atomic bombs to drop on the continental United States. See, when it was designed, the Russians had just announced that they had the atomic bomb. But neither the U.S. nor the Soviet Union had any such thing as an intercontinental ballistic missile, thank you very much, which really wouldn't be invented until the 1960s. So the only way to drop atomic bombs on your adversary was to put them on a bomber and fly over their territory. So clearly the United States was kind of worried about that capability, and so the Sabre was really designed to be a high-altitude, high-speed interceptor of Russian bombers. Now, the F-86 became famous by dueling with MiG-15s over the Yalu Valley in the Korean War in 1950 to 1953. But that was a little bit of a different role for it than what had originally been intended. And then eventually it also became a very successful fighter bomber, the F model, which is the one that's modeled in DCS. But, of course, that wasn't what it was originally designed to do, and so it'll be interesting to take a look at how it was adapted to that role. So, we're building up some serious speed here. We've just basically been flying straight and level, and we're up to almost 500 knots. So let's straighten out here a little bit. Okay, looking at our airspeed indicator, we can see that we're getting close to Mach 1. There's a Mach meter on the left, and then there's a yellow and red hashed needle on the airspeed indicator that shows us where Mach 1 is. So we're going to get fairly close to that, and then we're going to take it into a climb and see what we can do with that speed. Okay, up Mach 0.9, up we go. Well, that's clearly nothing short of impressive if you were coming to this from a piston engine Warbird. This is just a whole other level of performance. Let's roll out here. We're already over 10,000 feet. That flies nice upside down anyways. Okay, so let's take a little roll out. So the interesting thing about flying this in DCS is that a lot of people in DCS may be coming back to this after having flown more advanced jets. Even the A4 was designed a little later than the F-86. But the people who designed and flew it were coming solidly from a piston engine Warbird background. And that's what they were using as their metric when they were looking at the performance of the Sabre. And clearly, you know, it really is a warbird on steroids. It accelerates faster, it climbs higher, and in some ways it's also a lot better behaved. I mean, it's basically a platform built around an engine, but the engine isn't generating a massive amount of torque in one direction that you have to continually compensate for. And it's a tricycle landing gear, so it's not a real bugger to try and take off and land like the Warbirds were. So you could see why a Warbird pilot would just be in heaven getting a hold of one of these things. And that's the thing that makes it interesting to me as a simulator in DCS. Let me see if I can explain it to you. I'm really interested in what DCS can sort of show me, at least, about the history of military aviation. Gotten fascinated with that, looking at the history of iron bombing and going from the A4 to the Harrier to the A10. So it seemed like it would be really interesting to go back a step and look at the F-86, which was really the first modern jet aircraft that you know, survived more than a few years in service, and it really was the platform that pilots and designers learned about the capabilities of jet aircraft on. So it's interesting to me to go back and use DCS to find out how it was designed and what it was like to fly and what it was capable of doing. So now we're diving a little here. Let's see if we can get it up close to that Mach 1. Getting pretty close, and I'm starting to feel, you know, what pilots in the F-86 used to talk about, that ailerons particularly get pretty stiff as you get close to Mach 1. The elevator control seems to be still pretty fluid, but it does seem to have a bit of a mind of its own in roll as you get close to Mach 1. Yeah, apparently it was a lot better than the MiG-15. But it was still a bit of a handful as you got into that transonic region. So let's just level out here a bit. That was definitely interesting. So those of you who know this coastline know where we're headed. I'm taking a trip to the area of the map that I fondly refer to as the trench because of other videos that I've done with the A4 and even with the Harrier. So I'm going to do some low-level flying today. Just to get a sense of how the Sabre compares to the other aircraft I've flown. Kind of like when you take a car for a test drive and you always drive it down that one stretch of road or that one stretch of highway. Now, I will admit that, you know, flying low level like we're going to do today is not what the Sabre was designed to do, but it is a useful point of comparison to the other airplanes, so that's what I'm going to do with it today. So, as I was saying, what I want to do with the Sabre, why I want to make some videos, is I'm not so much interested in trying to teach everybody how to fly the Sabre, but I think, you know, there are some videos around that do that, but they're getting old and they're getting hard to find, so I'm going to maybe spend a little bit more time than I usually would talking about, you know, getting to know the airplane and learning how to fly it, because maybe there are some guys like me who've been spending a lot of time on, you know, have come to DCS from a Warbird platform. They spend a bit of time with the scooter because it's free. They're looking for something new to try. You know, and I think the Sabre is an interesting sort of transition. If you're used to flying Warbirds, you're going to feel pretty at home here. But it is a jet, and it is a full-featured full fidelity DCS aircraft. So maybe it'd be an interesting thing for you to try. So we're just getting ready to drop into the trench here. Okay, so let's roll in and get set up. So my plan is to make some videos about the F-86 that are a little bit more introductory, because frankly I'm learning it as I go. Now, I know that there are some really great videos out there about learning the F-86. Not really trying to replace those or second guess them, but I thought maybe interesting to have the perspective of what it's like to fly the F-86, to compare it to the Scooter and compare it to the Harrier and compare it to the A-10, which are what I know. So I can tell you right now, it's definitely a bit of a handful at low level. For one thing, I am standing on the rudder as we go around these turns, compared especially to modern aircraft like the Harrier or particularly the A-10, where you really don't need a lot of rudder input. I am just kicking the rudder to get around. And the interesting thing about that is while the simple flight model version of the A4 doesn't need a lot of rudder, it needs some. The EFM needs a lot more rudder, and so if I had to pick an aircraft that is most like what I'm feeling in the Sabre in this run, it probably would be the EFM A4 that we flew a few weeks back, which probably is a good sign, because the A4 really is only about 10 years newer than the F-86 in terms of its design. So, both aircraft were designed when you're using mechanical or hydraulic systems to move the control surfaces. There was no digital feedback. There was no fly-by-wire or enhanced stability modes or anything like that. You flew the aircraft with stick and rudder, and that is genuinely a different feeling than a lot of the modern aircraft. I can tell you, this is a different experience than flying even the Harrier, and certainly a different experience than flying the A-10. It's not a question of better or worse, but it definitely is different, and that's what makes it interesting to me, to be able to fly all of those aircraft in DCS and appreciate the differences between them, and to some extent understand where they came from in terms of the history, how the aircraft was designed, and also the technology that went into it. To me, that's really the fascinating thing about DCS. So you can see we're lining up on our favorite little bridge. I don't have any ordnance on board, so I can't take a shot at it. Just wanted to fly the same pattern. It's nice and solid in a dive, but you do want to make up your mind to pull out of the dive in plenty of time, let me tell you. All right, so we're turning for home. So what can you expect over the next few weeks? We're certainly going to take a look at the basic systems. Definitely going to take a look at what it was like to use the F-86 as a fighter bomber. So you can expect some more iron bombing missions with the F-86. I don't know how much air-to-air stuff I will cover, maybe some basic stuff, but air-to-air isn't my forte anyways. If there's anybody out there who has an F-86 that is a particularly good dogfighter in it, let me know. I'd be happy to have a guest pilot on flying the mission and just provide the video and the narration. If there are particular things about the F-86 that you would like me to make a video about, please leave those in the comments as well. What I can tell you is that it really is a lot of fun to fly. It's very much a stick and rudder aircraft. It really does confirm that it is a warbird on steroids. It's got lots of power and lots of speed, but you have to stay ahead of the aircraft, just like you do in a warbird. Once it gets going in a certain direction, it wants to stay going that way. And it can do things for you, but you really need to be ahead of the aircraft to tell it what you want. That's a nice tight corner. And I'm on full rudder. I am standing on the rudder on these turns. I'm actually working to get around the corner. And we're not quite going to make that one. And that is quite a different feeling, again, from the modern airplanes, although, again, pretty similar to the A4 EFM. So one more low pass down the river here. And then we're just going to take it up and do a little half Cuban, or I guess you could call it a reverse Immelman, just because it's kind of fun to see what it'll do. And again, in terms of performance, this the Sabre way faster and way more higher power to weight ratio than the A4, which was really designed to be a bomb truck and not an interceptor or fighter. So you can definitely see its pedigree there. So we're just going to roll inverted, pull the power back to idle, And we'll just pull 4 or 5 Gs down and see how quickly we can come around. A little bit more. There we go. There's 5 Gs. Yeah, she pivots around pretty good. So anyways, I'm really looking forward to flying the F-86. Looking forward to sharing the videos with you. If you want to see more of them, make sure you subscribe and put that notifications on. If you have any questions or any suggestions about what to do with the F-86 Sabre, let me know. But for now, this is going to be Sidekick, signing off.